Welcome back to another episode of Extra Literary Affairs, a podcast for the lit curious reader because why not read a little of everything? I'm Joey Kelly.
And I'm Jennifer Smith.
And today we are reading books 9 through 16 of the Odyssey. So we're continuing our own Odyssey of the Odyssey. Before we get into the details of today's sections, I just wanted to do a temperature check on how we're feeling about our revisiting of the Odyssey. I mean, we haven't done it on this channel, but we have both read it separately outside of this. Are you picking up anything new this time? In general, do you have a different sense of enjoyment?
Every time I've encountered this material over the last 20 years, 30 years, however long it's been, I've always been swept up in it. In anticipation for us at the end of the month, seeing the movie, I'm wanting to immerse myself into this world. I have been reading it. I have been listening to it, the original, what I'm going to call it, the classic version by Robert Fagles, and also Emily Wilson's more modernized version. I'm getting different things from this experience from the standpoint that, boy, these guys do a lot of bragging.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that so much in my earlier readings of it. And I think the current political climate, the awareness of women's voices being suppressed, all the things that I, as a grown woman, have come to appreciate in my advanced years, if you can say that, in this time, a lot of things are hitting me differently. Still loving it, though. 100%, 10 out of 10. I'd read it again next week if you're like, hey, let's do part 2. I'm like, yes. And by part 2, you mean just read the thing all over again. Yes, please.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm still very much enjoying it. I think this time I'm reading it a little bit more carefully because obviously we were discussing it. And last time I was just doing it just because I had never read it in totality. I have, of course, as many people have, read sections throughout my education. But this time I am surprised how quickly I can read it. And not that like, oh my God, I have this super fast reading speed. I do have a quick reading speed in general, but I mean, the pacing of the story is super quick. So there's really not a lot of dull moments in the Odyssey itself. There's always something going on. Odysseus or Telemachus, it's one or the other. They're working towards something and we are along for the journey, the Odyssey, okay? So I think if anyone is still a little hesitant about reading it and they just want to watch the movie, which is totally fine, you do not have to read it if you don't want to. I would just say, even though it looks kind of long and it's 420 pages, it's a poem. If you didn't know that, and I feel like some people did not know that when I've been talking about it recently. So it reads very quickly, and I think you would be surprised how fast-paced it is for being over 2,000 years old.
If you look at it on the page, half of the page is white space because it's a poem. So you're like, it's 400 pages. It's actually more like 200 because half of the words are missing on the other side of the page.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I mean, cut it in half. It's really not a huge amount of time that you have to spend if you're just going to read it for pleasure and just to see what it's all about. I wanted to bring up one of the major themes that we did not talk about yet in our first episode, which is, of course, homecoming and this idea of the hero's journey, because this is what this story is really about, is Odysseus coming back to Ithaca after the Trojan War and reuniting with his kingdom and his wife and his son and reclaiming his throne. Do you want to kick us off, Jennifer?
Joey, I would love to talk about what really struck me every time I've read it is this idea of longing for home. This idea in Greek is called nostos, which is the root of nostalgia. And as a person who is very sentimental and always longs for home, I thought that was just really interesting to look at how many ways this quest for home goes wrong. Sometimes it goes right. A lot of times it doesn't. It feels like it is an overarching theme to the entire poem. So home in the sense of he's longing for Ithaca, he needs to go home, isn't exactly just a physical space he's going to. He has to go through this psychological and personal development to be ready to go back home. I'm always surprised when Odysseus is like, oh, I can't wait to get home. Oh, wait, I'm just going to stop on this island real quick for like 7 years. I'll be right back. How many different people are longing for home and what happens when they get there? The Lotus Eaters are tempting the crewmen to while away their hours in luxury and pleasure, and they forget that they're supposed to be going home. Agamemnon, he loses his home through betrayal. He comes home to be murdered by his wife and her boyfriend, which I know we'll talk about that. The crew, many of them don't make it home because they decided to be greedy. They were told not to do something and they just jumped right in and did it anyway. When we finally get to Telemachus and Odysseus, they arrive home to a place that was not the same as it was when they left. And so I just really thought that was an interesting thing to explore, these ideas of home is wherever you are in some sense, but it's also very much the idea of what you left behind.
To your point, this is the hero's journey, which is not only just part of the story in this, but it is a literary device made famous by Joseph Campbell, who recorded all of this and noticed all of these traits and tropes. The hero has to do this, and then this happens, and blah, blah, blah. You can read it from Joseph Campbell because I didn't memorize it. Also, what makes it a really fast-paced story is because Odysseus is doing these very familiar beats in a story. So you kind of get what's going to happen next. You might not know exactly what it's going to do, but you understand that the story has to progress in a specific way for him to continue on the hero's journey, as according to Joseph Campbell. And so you can see this reflected in so many stories throughout Western literature, which is why we bring up this story a lot, because it is reflected in so many other stories, whether it's medieval or Renaissance or early modern or any time after that. I don't have to go through all the eras in Western civilization, but I think it's very recognizable and it really helps a lot of modern readers. Again, you're recognizing what's going on, even though it sounds like this would be a very foreign idea, this over 2,000-year-old story, like it should be sort of cumbersome and sort of dry, and it's really not. It's exciting, and like I said in the beginning, it's constantly moving.
And Joey, it feels very modern and relevant from the standpoint that they're talking a lot about human nature, emotions, friendship, loyalty, greed, pride. All of these things are incorporated into the story. So if you're like, is this really relevant to me and my life? Give it a shot. I think you'll find a lot of things that resonate with your own personal development and your own relationships.
Yeah, give it a shot. Like we said, oh my God, just read it. It'll be really good. You could use the audiobook as well. You could do it either way, but you should read it, not just watch the movie and read different translations. But anyway, we were talking about homecoming. Obviously, like you were just talking about, this is a really important part of the story. It's basically the point is that he has to come full circle. We don't see exactly what's happening in Troy, but he does have to return home.
And we know that he did leave. That was very important.
Yeah.
It just starts, as they say, in medias res.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the story.
Just jump right into the middle of the story. And Joey, I appreciate how they contrasted different people's homecoming. So Odysseus, his wife has been waiting. She's like, oh my God, I can't wait for you to get back. And Agamemnon's wife is like, oh, you're back. I guess now we have to murder you so I can be with the person
curtains
I really
for
want.
you, Agamemnon. Yeah, that's an interesting point, that homecoming means something different to each character. Penelope is waiting for her husband's return, his homecoming, and it's really because she seems to love him. I don't know. He doesn't have too many positive traits in my book. And to free her from all of these suitors who are constantly trying to marry her and have sex with her and steal all her money, and Telemachus's money as well, and his throne. And Telemachus, the same thing. He's kind of older, though, so I'm not really sure. There must be a historical reason, or maybe it's just for plot, why Telemachus cannot just take the throne. He's at least 20 years old.
But he seems like a young 20, Joey. But also, because his father has been absent this entire time, who has been schooling him to take over the kingdom? He may just not be ready. And admitting that his father is dead is going to be a huge thing for him. So it's like, I'm not going to step up and take my dad's spot until we 100% have proof that he is not coming back. Because what's going to happen when I take over and my dad's going to come back? And, my dad murders people is something that child might be thinking. So maybe I'll just hold off for a minute.
Yeah, that's the reason, is because they cannot confirm that Odysseus is dead. Okay, so I don't know why that didn't click for me for a second. That's it. You solved the mystery for me. Okay, but I think to your point, who would train him to be a royal? And his mother should be able to. I mean, there are plenty of instances in real life where queens are left basically in control. Eleanor of Aquitaine is an excellent example, okay? If you don't know who she is, everyone, you look her up because she is a boss ass bitch in the medieval era. Anyway, she runs England and most of France for her husband and for her children, the princes who eventually become kings. There's no reason why Penelope really couldn't. I mean, I understand it's a different time, but she could have been training Telemachus to be a royal, basically, and how to control a kingdom, because I bet she could do it. She's obviously very smart. I need to obviously learn more about the history of this.
I just want to push back a little bit on that, Joey. I have no doubts that Penelope, she was chosen by Odysseus for a reason. I feel that they had a very strong kinship and they had a very clear vision of how they wanted to move about the world together. I think the fighting, being a great orator, about being physically strong and how to do all the sports and all of those things, I think that he was not going to be able to get that type of instruction from his mom. Well, what about your uncles? Well, they would have to be uncles on the mom's side, because one thing that caught my attention this read through is that it's an only child has an only child who has an only child, and they're always men. You guys are really not broadening your line, but that does make succession very simple.
Yeah.
One man,
Sure does.
one son. We're pretty clear on how that's going to work.
Yeah, he's not the seventh son of his seventh son kind of thing. But that's a good point. The line of succession is very clear, and he's definitely the heir apparent in Ithaca. This is not what we were going to talk about, but it's a good point that there is another type of training for him to have to go through, Telemachus does, in order to take the throne of Ithaca, had he been able to confirm that his father was dead. Now, if he did, I would imagine that Telemachus would have just taken the throne, but I guess it was all contingent upon Penelope remarrying, although could she do that if he wasn't dead? But anyway, moving on to what we were actually going to talk about here today. I do want to talk about Odysseus in disguise as he's coming home, because I think this is a trait of his that really grinds my gears, is that, number one, he is coming in disguise, which I do understand to an extent, because there are this legion of suitors awaiting him and they can quickly outnumber him and just pile on and murder him and then be like, all right, Penelope, it's time to get married, one of us. So I can see that. But the testing part really just pisses me off. Like, everyone needs to be tested. His slave, Euamus, I don't know how to say his name.
Yeah.
You guys know what I'm talking about, okay? I can't pronounce all these fucking names.
His loyal slave who's been with him the whole time.
His father purchased him, and he's been in the family the entire time. And he is still tested to be like, I need to make sure that you're loyal to Odysseus before I can move on. And he's sort of taking advantage of his kindness. And there's also this idea of hospitality throughout the entire poem, because this is a major part of the culture at this time, because you're going to assume that every stranger is a god or goddess in disguise. And so the worst thing you could do is not be hospitable to them. So you better just do it for everyone, just in case that could be a god or a goddess.
Joey, I was really thinking about that today. So when he meets the Cyclops is like, I don't know what culture you came from, but I don't worship your gods and I do not follow your rules. So munch, munch, munch. He's going to eat a couple of the crewmen just to make his point that I'm not following your rules of hospitality. So I also thought was very interesting. Can you be hospitable to people who don't follow your customs? They talk about people are pirates. They're raiders. Yeah, we sacked that city. We stole their wives, stole all their stuff, got in the boat and left. Well, that was also not very hospitable. What is the obligation to the host to the guest and the guest to the host? And I think when Agamemnon was recounting his story, he was like, can you believe the gall of this guy who not only steals my wife, but he invites me to this beautiful banquet, everybody's guards down, we're having a nice dinner, we're having some drinks, and then they murder me right at the table. That is not in the rules of hospitality.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was pretty dirty, but like, also good for you, Clytemnestra. You should be free to be able to do what you want, okay, girl? And you should. If you don't want that guy, you should trade him in for someone else. That is obviously a major detail of this story in any Greek myth or epic or the Iliad or any other play or anything coming out of ancient Greece and antiquity in general. It's interesting to see who does that apply to. And I think it has to do probably with piety, because Polyphemus is like, I'm not praying to your gods. I don't care. Yeah, I'm aware that my dad is one of them. Obviously, Poseidon is his dad. And he's still like, and I don't care.
Yeah, I get a pass. My dad's already checked that box for me, so I don't have to believe in this stuff.
Although there are a lot of demigods throughout all Greek myths, and they're still pious. So I don't know why the Cyclops is like, I refuse. I'm really not going to do it. Because I guess he's just Poseidon's one of his favorites. So he's like, I'm not going to, whatever. He doesn't have to do it. Everyone else, you have to do it though, but not him.
And Joey, in Emily Wilson's version, she refers to that whole group of Cyclops people as mavericks that do not follow the laws and the customs. So I thought that was just a very interesting word choice to say that they were mavericks. They just don't go with the flow and they accept that they're not going to. Don't stop by for a snack because you will be the snack.
Yeah, and not in a good way. Not like the modern, like, oh, you're a snack. This is a good opportunity for us to discuss Polyphemus and the Cyclops and all of the other stories that Odysseus tells while he's in Phaeacia. Because this time, as I was reading it, I found myself being very suspicious of these stories because Odysseus, at the end, as he's telling the court, but he's really telling the king and the queen of Phaeacia here, he says at the end of the story, why should I tell the story that I told you and your wife yesterday in your house? It is annoying, repeating tales that have been told before. So I took that as, and I could be wrong, but I took it as, I don't want to have to retell the same story. And literally, that's what he's saying. But as in, I need to embellish a little bit. I need to mix it up. It has to be an entertaining story. And I think it's important to take the context into consideration because he is in a foreign kingdom with literally nothing. He had nothing, no clothes, no treasure, no money. He had nothing to trade other than his stories. So he's like, I better make this good. He has his reputation as Odysseus, obviously, and everything that he did at Troy. And that precedes him, certainly, because obviously the bard is singing about him. But he doesn't have anything to barter with other than just relying on the kingdom's hospitality and generosity. So I took this as he wants to embellish and to change the story a little bit to make it more entertaining than it could have possibly been, because Odysseus doesn't tell us the entire story. He's not the narrator. So this part, when he tells us about Polyphemus the Cyclops and Circe, especially, those are two big stories that most people know about. Obviously, Circe's the one that turns men into pigs, as she should. So we're getting all of this from him. He is retelling this. This is his eyewitness account, basically. So should we be wary of him? Because he self-identifies as a liar and a trickster. So I found myself being like, I don't know if I believe what you're saying is true. I think there might be a little fibbing in this. I don't know what it is in this story that he might have been embellishing, but I don't think it's entirely factual.
Joey, I appreciate you saying that. And one of the things that happens throughout the entire Odyssey poem, so many things are repeated. Rosy-fingered dawn comes early every day. Emily Wilson specifically spoke about, she's like, okay, they said that same phrase 23 times, and I needed to change it up a bit to make it not as repetitive. I also agree with you that Odysseus is known as a liar, as a person who will use cunning to get his way. He's very quick on his feet. He would probably be great at improv games. I would love to throw down with Odysseus. That would be my dream date. It was very interesting because my interpretation of why he said, I don't like repeating all of this stuff. I don't want to do this. And as you said, the king was like, well, I need to hear more and you owe me. So continue. Odysseus had just come in from one of his shipwrecks or adventures. He washes up on shore, however he makes it into this kingdom. And he's like, I'm tired. Because he said something to the effect, Joey, and I think there's a quote that I'll pull out, that he says, there's a time for telling stories and there's a time for sleeping. And I would like to go to sleep, but if you need me to tell stories, I will tell you some more stories. I think Odysseus is kind of a jerk at times because he was telling all these great stories about the underworld and all of the stuff that was great. And he was like, oh, well, let me just tell you something that's not so great. Let's talk about Agamemnon and Clytemnestra and the fact that he is murdered and this whole thing. And it kind of took a turn. It's like, if you're going to force me to keep telling the stories, I'm just going to go to the back and tell you all the dark stories until you're like, oh, look at the time. I think we should just be moving on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he recounts how he went to the underworld into Hades and he saw obviously Agamemnon and Achilles. And Achilles says something that is mentioned by Menelaus as well, or the same sentiment is that he's basically like, I would rather have been a farmer. If I could do it again, I wouldn't have gone to war. I wouldn't have gone to Troy for this. I want to be alive and I want to be with the people that I loved. Some scholars think this is as well as the Iliad. is an anti-war poem because it really shows the realities of what war could be like. I mean, the Iliad is a lot more gruesome, and there's a lot of detail specifically about how people are killed. It's visceral, but I think we get a taste of that in the Odyssey, especially with, as I said, Menelaus and with Achilles, who are both like, I shouldn't have done that. I would rather have done anything else. Menelaus would give up all his wealth if he could have his friends back, and Achilles is like, I should have stuck to being a farmer because this is not it. This sucked.
It's very interesting to think these poems that are centered on war actually come across as war is ridiculously non-productive. Nobody likes the outcome. It's just not worth it. All the money in the world is not worth it. And Joey, just a little sidebar to that. I was also thinking when Odysseus is recounting everyone he saw in Hades in the underworld, there's a lot of people. Statistically, in my mind, there are more people dead than there are alive, and you will be dead forever. Just like the immortal gods are alive forever, the people in the underworld stay dead forever. And that was just a very haunting memento mori moment for me of life is short, but death is long. So let's make the most out of the life that we have while we have it. That was something that was also this idea of homecoming, of loving the people that are in your life and really enjoying that.
Yeah, and I think it's especially profound that Menelaus is the one to also say this because a big reason why they go to war is because of Helen, his wife, and the fact that he is sitting there after with his trophy wife, literally Helen, being like, I don't know, I would rather just have my friends here than have all of that. These are surprising things that I think if you're not familiar with Greek myth and these stories and the Odyssey, I think that would be sort of shocking to be like, these men, specifically Menelaus and Achilles, who fought bravely. One of them dies. Okay, obviously, not a spoiler alert. Well, I guess if you haven't read the Iliad, Achilles dies. That you would be sort of surprised that they would be so regretful and be like, no, it should not have happened. And I would take it back if I could. You would think, oh, these are honorable, brave men who, of course, would go to war and not think twice about it. And they were like, no, it's actually not the ticket.
Joey, as you were talking about that, I am reminded that these are the heroes of stories. They are the epitome of masculinity. They were successful. Their reputation lives on. They are in these exalted places in our imagination. And they said, you know what, guys? It's actually not worth it. And that was just such an interesting thing to think about. You know, you can trust me to tell you it's not worth it. You know how I know? Because I was there and I reached the epitome of fame and glory and heroism for what? I'd rather just be a normal person living my life as it was before I made the decision to go to war. And I just think that is such a particularly for where we are in the world at this exact moment, a message that I'm hopeful many more people will take to light, that you do not need to be a war hero to be an honorable man.
Yeah, that's a great point. Again, it's very surprising maybe to some people that something so old could be so relevant to us today, where countries want to go to war and they think this makes them strong men. They're fictional strong men, but they are sort of the stereotype. And even they are like, don't do it. Forget about it. It's not even worth it. You're going to regret it. We, again, did not discuss all the little nitty-gritty details of this section. I think you should probably just read it because we don't want to recap. That's kind of boring. But hopefully we gave some good insight into major themes that continue throughout the Odyssey here and specific character motivations and stuff like that. So next time, our final episode for the poem, the Odyssey, is going to be the remaining books, 17 through 24. And next time, just a heads up, maybe read it with this in mind, everyone, if you're following along with us, that women, again, are going to be brought up in the story as they will do because they are throughout the entire narrative here. I think there's really a shift in this section of the poem where women, I mean, they weren't in the best light from Homer in the beginning. I think there's a lot more demonization of women in this section and where they are sort of seen to be the originators of sin and that this is why so many men fall, especially Agamemnon. He's not too happy about Clytemnestra.
He is not, Joanne. I really look forward to maybe dispelling some of the myths or pointing some holes in the logic of why the men have decided that the women are the root of all these problems. I really think that we'll have some fun sorting that out.
Yeah, so if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, comment, and subscribe and share, please. And follow us on TikTok at Extra Literary Affairs.
See you next week, Joey.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.